So we chose one, we went in. It was the kind of a restaurant where they came to you and said, "Well, are you ready to make your selection?" And if you said yes, they would take you into the back room and pull out the drawers of ice, and you had to pick your fish. Suffice to say that it took a long time to eat dinner. And so at the end of the evening, which now must have been 11 or 11:30, we finished, we paid our check, we asked the restaurant to call us a cab. They obliged. We said goodbye, we went out and waited on the stairs for about 25 minutes. During which time the lights in the restaurant had clicked out and the door had clicked locked. So there we're sitting in Piraeus looking at the harbor. And Margie turns to me and says, "Well, what do you suppose we ought to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, that there are a number of options here, but we could walk." She said, "You know, why don't we just walk?" I said, "Are you going to be all right in those heels?" And she said, yeah, let's just walk. So we're walking along the harbor, and a certain subject comes up. She knew how I felt, and she brought it up anyway. She and my wife had something in common. She turned to Cathal and said, "You know, we both have done est." We ought to be able to create a cab. So I laughed and laughed and laughed, because that was my favorite thing in those days, to poo-poo est. And now we're walking along the harbor road, and you can see now the lights of the city, not actual lights, the lights reflecting off the clouds above the city. But we're thinking, if it's a 20 or 25 minute cab ride, we're going to be walking until dawn. There's not a soul around. We're surrounded by reeds and bulrushes, and the road goes through, and the harbor is still on the right. And suddenly we come to this intersection, has a blinker light. And there are two roads that go up this way and over a hill, and there are perhaps 5 houses at the intersection, and nothing else anywhere around. No sign of civilization. In Greece, no sign of civilization. And we get to the far end of the intersection, and wouldn't you know it, over the hill, 2 cabs, one on each road, scooting down the hill and jostling for our business. I looked at Marge, she looked at me, and this is what she did. It's true. I have one more Margie story. We were doing an industrial at the Arik Round Theater. It's enormous. It's in Chicago, for those of you who have never seen it. It's stadium size. And it was the International Harvester Industrial. Tractors. And we're singing and dancing on the Arik Round stage. There's 8 of us. It's hard to fill the Arik Round stage with 24 people, but there's 8 of us selling it like we didn't know we could. The end of the number had been staged, so that at the end of the number we walked all the way down to the footlights, spread all the way across the footlights, and behind us a drop went up, and 4 tractors with their headlights aimed at the audience pulled forward like this, and 2 went off to the side, and 2 went off to the side, and then from the wings on either side came bigger tractors on the side, and one went this way and one went this way. And then a drop all the way upstage went up, and an earth mover, which we don't know what they are. The wheels on the earth mover are 10 feet in diameter. It's got a big hinge in the middle, and it's enormous. It snakes its way downstage and poses center and back of us. dress rehearsal night. We sing, we dance, we go downstage, da-da-da. The tractors come on, the drop goes up, the tractors come down and pull to the side. The two tractors come on from one side and the other, the engines roaring. We smell fumes. The drop goes up, and the earth mover comes downstage like this and parks dead center like this, and we finish singing and we go ba-bump, and the lights bump up bright. And there's a great silence. And on the God mic, from the back of the house, comes Margie's voice. Kids, can you please move to the left and right? We can't quite see the product. It was the first time I'd ever heard a certain noise that she used to make, which I was very fond of. She said, listen for it, it's at the end. We can't quite see the product. Okay, moving right along. Then there was the time when she did Wind in the Willows, when I worked with her on that. And her hips were very bad at that point. I remember one day, the only, it wasn't really a negative remark, but maybe for her it was. The only time I'd ever heard her say anything like this, she turned to me one day and she said, it's so unfair that I got this job and my hips betrayed me. But shortly after that, as you know, she had her hips fixed, she wrote a book, she became a published author, and then, so once more, reinventing herself. She decided to go into the bed and breakfast business. She registered with an organization that books European tourists into bed and breakfasts in this area. She had, Pam by this time was off on her own. She redid Pam's room into a guest room, and she would, people would arrive late in one day. She would sit them down, and her formula was, she would say, this is such a great city. You know, you have to see this, and you have to see that, and you have to go down to the Statue of Liberty, you have to see the top of the Empire State Building, you have to go there. You have a lot to do, so I'm going to call you at 7 in the morning, and I'll get you out, we'll have breakfast, and you'll get out on that, and you will see wonderful things. And she did. She up at 7, and the breakfast was out, and the breakfast was, you know, not a huge effort. It was orange juice and a couple of donuts, she would tell me. But still, and get the person out by no later than 9 o'clock so that she could run back into the bedroom and clean up all of the luggage and tchotchkes that were there from the guest, so that at 10 o'clock, the voice teacher that she had rented it to for voice lessons could go into the bedroom and give the voice lessons, which had to be over by 3 or 4, because then she had to be ready for the guest when he came back, put the suitcase back, put the tchotchkes on the door. She was a force to be reckoned with. She genuinely was. I never. And that wasn't the end. She kept reinventing, didn't she? She called me. I'll never forget. She called me, and frequently she would call. I don't know. I share this with you only because it warms my heart just to think of it. She calls me, and she got in the habit of saying, Jimmy Brennan, men have named you. And then she would roar with laughter. So she called, and she said, I've got a job as a receptionist at a doctor's office. I said, really? She said, yeah, they're psychologists, and I can really help people.